The rain came down like the sky had split open that November evening. Dorothy Hayes stood at her kitchen window watching the storm roll across the Indiana countryside. At 62 years old she had seen plenty of storms, but this one felt different. The wind howled through the old oak trees surrounding her farmhouse and lightning painted the darkness in bright flashes. Dorothy had lived alone in this house for 3 years now since her husband James passed. Their children had moved to the cities years ago and visited when they could. She had her garden and her church and her quiet routines. Most days that was enough. She was about to step away from the window when she saw headlights cutting through the rain on the county road. Then more lights. The vehicles were moving slowly and she could hear the rumble of motorcycles even over the storm. As they got closer she counted 8 bikes struggling against the wind and rain. Dorothy watched as the group pulled into her long gravel driveway. They must have seen her porch light. In weather like this anyone with sense would seek shelter. She walked to her front door and opened it as the riders dismounted their bikes and ran toward her covered porch. They were a sight to behold. Big men in leather vests soaked through despite their rain gear. The vests had patches that read, "Hell's Angels," and other insignia she didn't recognize. Their beards dripped water and their boots were caked in mud. For a moment they all just stood there staring at each other. 8 rough-looking bikers and one small black grandmother in her housedress and slippers. The man in front removed his helmet. His hair was gray and his face was weathered, but his eyes were kind. He looked to be about her age, maybe a bit younger. "Ma'am," he said, "I'm real sorry to bother you, but this storm caught us between towns. We've been riding in this for the last hour and it's getting dangerous. Would you mind if we waited it out on your porch here? We won't be any trouble." Dorothy looked at them standing there dripping and cold. She thought about what James would do. She knew exactly what he would do. "You can't wait out this storm on the porch," she said. "You'll freeze. Come on inside." The man who had spoken looked surprised. "Ma'am, that's very kind, but there's 8 of us. We don't want to impose." "I'm not asking," Dorothy said with the firmness of a woman who had raised 4 children. "Get yourselves in here before you catch pneumonia. Leave your wet boots by the door." They filed in one by one, looking uncertain. Dorothy noticed how careful they were wiping their feet and hanging their dripping jackets on the hooks she pointed to. Soon her small living room was filled with 8 large men trying not to take up too much space. "My name is Dorothy Hayes," she said. "Now who do I have in my home?" The gray-haired man spoke first. "I'm Frank. This here is Tommy, Russ, Carl, Danny, Miguel, Steve, and that young one is Jake. We're heading back from a memorial service for a friend up in Michigan. Got caught in this weather. Well, Frank and everyone else, sit down before you fall down. I'm going to make coffee and see what I can fix for supper. I imagine you're all hungry." "Ma'am, we couldn't," Frank started, but Dorothy held up her hand. "You could and you will. I've got a pot of soup on the stove and plenty of cornbread. Now sit." For the next hour Dorothy's kitchen came alive in a way it hadn't in years. She heated up the vegetable soup she had made that morning and put out cornbread and butter. The men sat around her dining table and at the kitchen counter eating like they hadn't seen food in days. They were polite, almost formal in their manners. As they ate they talked. Dorothy learned that Frank had been riding for 40 years. Tommy was a grandfather of 5. Russ was a mechanic who had served in Vietnam. Each man had a story and Dorothy listened to them all. "Mrs. Hayes," young Jake said, "this is the best cornbread I've ever had. My grandmother used to make it, but she passed last year. Hasn't tasted anything like this since." Dorothy patted his shoulder. "You can take some with you when you go, honey. The secret is buttermilk and a cast iron skillet." The storm raged outside, but inside Dorothy's house there was warmth and laughter. The men helped her clean up the kitchen, insisting she sit while they washed dishes. It was a strange sight, these tough bikers carefully drying her good china and putting it away where she directed. Around 9 o'clock the rain started to let up. Frank stood and stretched. "Mrs. Hayes, I think we can safely get back on the road now. We've got about 2 hours to ride yet. I can't thank you enough for your kindness. Most people see us and cross to the other side of the street. You opened your door without hesitation." Dorothy smiled. "Most people are just scared of what they don't understand. I see 8 men who got caught in a storm. That's all. You be safe out there now." Before they left, each man came and hugged Dorothy or shook her hand. Miguel had tears in his eyes. "My mother would have done what you did," he said quietly. "She always said kindness costs nothing but means everything. Thank you for reminding me." Dorothy stood on her porch and watched them ride away, their taillights disappearing into the night. Then she cleaned up, went to bed, and figured that was the end of it. Just a strange evening during a storm. A memory to share with her daughters when they called. She had no idea what the next morning would bring. Dorothy woke to an unusual sound. It was early, maybe 7 o'clock, and she heard what sounded like distant thunder. But the sky was clear. She got dressed and went to make her coffee. The rumbling sound grew louder. When she looked out her front window, she gasped. Coming down her road was a parade of motorcycles. Not 8 this time. Dozens of them. Maybe 100 or more. They filled her driveway and lined the road in front of her house. The riders began shutting off their engines, and the sudden quiet was almost as startling as the noise had been. Dorothy opened her front door. Frank was walking up her porch steps with a big smile on his face. "Morning, Mrs. Hayes. Hope we didn't startle you. I made some calls last night after we left. Told the brothers what you did for us. We wanted to do something for you in return." "Frank, I don't understand," Dorothy said. "I just gave you soup." "You gave us more than soup, ma'am. You gave us respect, dignity, a place at your table when you had every reason to turn us away. Now we'd like to return the favor. I noticed your porch has some rotten boards. Your fence needs mending. Gutters look like they need cleaning. If you'll allow us, we'd like to spend the day fixing things up around here." Dorothy felt tears spring to her eyes. "I can't ask you to do that. You're not asking. We're offering. We got carpenters and electricians and plumbers in this group. Roofers too. Whatever needs doing, we can handle it." What happened next was something Dorothy would remember for the rest of her life. The bikers spread out across her property. Some worked on the porch, replacing boards and reinforcing the railings. Others tackled the fence that had been leaning since the last big wind. A group cleaned out her gutters and checked her roof. Someone noticed her kitchen faucet dripped and fixed it. They mowed her lawn and trimmed her hedges. Women had come too, wives and girlfriends of the riders. They helped Dorothy in the house, organizing and cleaning and chatting. One woman named Sarah was a nurse, and she checked Dorothy's blood pressure and made sure she had her medications organized properly. "My doctor has been after me to get one of those pill organizers," Dorothy admitted. "I keep forgetting which pills I took." "Well, now you're all set," Sarah said, showing her the new organizer they had labeled for her. "And here's my number. You call me if you ever need anything medical explained or if you just want to talk." Around noon, more people arrived. Someone had called ahead and ordered pizza for everyone. The front yard turned into a picnic with bikers and Dorothy all eating together. Her neighbors drove by, slowly staring in disbelief at the scene. Dorothy just waved. Tommy approached her in the afternoon. "Mrs. Hayes, I noticed your heating oil tank is pretty low. Winter's coming. We'd like to fill it for you if that's all right." "Tommy, I can't let you spend money on me," Dorothy protested. "Consider it done already," he said gently. "The truck's coming this afternoon. And we took up a collection. The brothers wanted you to have this." He handed her an envelope. Inside was $3,000 in cash. "I can't accept this," Dorothy said, her voice shaking. Frank came over and knelt beside her chair. "Mrs. Hayes, please, let us do this. You'll never know how much last night meant to us. Every man here has a story about being judged or rejected or feared just because of how we look. You didn't do that. You saw us as people first. That's rare. That's precious. This is our way of saying thank you." Dorothy wiped her eyes and nodded, unable to speak. The work continued until sunset. When they were done, Dorothy's home looked better than it had in years. Everything was repaired and painted and fixed. Her woodpile was stocked for winter. Her pantry was filled with groceries they had brought. Even her car had been serviced and detailed. As they prepared to leave, each person came to say goodbye. Many hugged her and promised to visit. Frank was last. "You've got family now, Mrs. Hayes," he said, "all across this state and beyond. You need anything, you call me. I mean that. We take care of our own and you're one of us now." He handed her a leather vest like the ones they wore but smaller. On the back it said, "Honorary Member," with an angel wearing a halo. On the front was a patch that read, Dorothy. After they left, Dorothy sat on her newly repaired porch watching the sun go down. She put on the vest even though it looked ridiculous with her house dress. It felt like a warm hug. Her phone rang. It was her daughter Linda calling from Chicago. "Mama, your neighbor Mrs. Peterson just called me. She said there were 100 motorcycles at your house today. Are you okay? Should I come down there?" Dorothy laughed a deep, joyful laugh. "Oh honey, I'm more than okay. Let me tell you about the storm we had last night and the angels who came after." In the years that followed, the bikers kept their promise. They visited regularly and checked on Dorothy. When she had a small stroke 2 years later, it was Sarah the nurse who noticed during a visit and got her to the hospital in time. When Dorothy's granddaughter graduated from college, Frank and 20 riders showed up to celebrate with the family. Dorothy lived to be 89 years old. At her funeral, the church was packed. Half the congregation was bikers in their leather vests. They served as pallbearers and planted a garden at the cemetery in her memory. Every year on the anniversary of that stormy November night, they still ride out to that garden and tend to it. On Dorothy's headstone, her children had engraved words that Frank had spoken at her service. She opened her door to strangers and taught angels how to fly. Sometimes kindness is just soup on a rainy night. Sometimes it's seeing people for who they really are instead of what they appear to be. And sometimes that small act of grace creates ripples that spread farther than we could ever imagine, touching lives and changing hearts for generations to come. That's what Dorothy Hayes did. She opened her door, and in doing so she opened her heart. And the world became a little bit warmer, a little bit kinder because of it.